All right. So, welcome to the Take Your Health Back Now well, not live unless you're in the Facebook group, but
Right.
podcast for November 14th, 2024. If you're watching this down the line, I am Jenny Wise and this is Kendra Duquette. We are with Take Your Health Back Now and also the Duquette Functional Medicine and Preventative Health Clinic. It's always a mouthful.
Right.
Experts in preventative health, environmental toxins, overall wellness. And we do this podcast to bring, value and information out to our community. So hopefully you enjoy. Today we are going to talk about the gut-brain connection and these kind of chronic increasing mental health issues that are going on and how that connects to really your foundational health, your gut. So this is a really good topic. It's something that a lot of people don't connect. Conventional medicine tends to look at all of your issues separately. So a lot of people don't understand that these can just be symptoms of just underlying dysfunction.
Right. Right. If you go to conventional medicine, they're going to send you on to, you need to go to a counselor, psychologist, something like that, medication for anxiety, medication for this. And it's so prevalent in our society right now. And it's more like they treat it as a separate entity from health. I think that's part of the problem. There's a big disconnect there. But we've seen this over the past, however many years and years, with all different age groups, different, male, women, children, older people, it doesn't really matter. But it's getting worse. Like I would say at this point, 100% of the people that I talk to are having several of these issues. And symptoms always appear to someone very unique to the individual. So, if you listen to us, we talk about our posters behind us all the time, the tree. So, however your body is showing you that it is overwhelmed, the symptoms are like a snowflake or a fingerprint. They're unique to you. So different people have different mental health issues showing up, but they are always more than one, seems like, and they're always still as symptoms of that underlying cause.
And sometimes symptoms of other solutions that you've gotten from conventional medicine. So sometimes if you actually read through that giant, novel that they give you with the side effects and possible, interactions and things with medications, a lot of them do list mental health type issues, anxiety, restlessness, sleeplessness,
depression, suicide. That's a big one on anxiety medication.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And ones that don't even list that, if you're like regularly on antibiotics or you're regularly on something hormonal for like birth control or other issues, those are going to affect the endocrine system, which is then going to affect how you're feeling, which then gets labeled mental health. So there are so many direct causes, and then there are these other like less direct causes that people don't connect.
Right, which we'll kind of go into today to give you an idea. But I did want to mention that a lot of the people that I've been talking to lately are young people. And I'm talking like, boy, so here's my statistics of just people that I have been talking to or that we have worked with for years. So it's interesting because lately the children, when I say young people, that's what I'm talking about right now, is children that we're working with tend to be around 10 to 12 years old, and they tend to all be boys, which is interesting, mostly boys. Then over the years, I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but there are a lot of teenagers dealing with this. And that tends to be, I would say, half and half of boys and girls in that kind of high school age group. Some junior high, but more high school, more the end of high school, like into the beginning of college. that age group. So we're talking maybe 18 to 21, even 24. That's a big age group for this. And then, yeah, and then it becomes very balanced across the board where it's boys or girls. And then you get up into adulthood and it's interesting. It's almost all women. So
I feel like some of that is maybe, I don't know the good word for it, like societal. Like
right.
you think about like tweens, and the whole stereotype is like, oh, tween girls are so dramatic, and you just expect them to be like that. So you don't, like, parents might not necessarily label it or look into it as a symptom, where a boy being like dramatic and weepy and, that signals something wrong more so.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're going to get more help that way. And I think with women, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you're less likely to advocate for yourself until you're a little bit older and have a better support system, or maybe more on your own, more independent.
Right.
And then you're going to look into those and you're going to admit those things are issues in your life where, when you're young and you're raising a family, that stuff just goes, you are not on that priority list at all.
Right. And men, we definitely work with men as well. It's just not as many men that are coming forward with that issue. So I think it's just like Benny said, it's always probably very balanced, equal between men and women, boys and girls. But once they get to adulthood, men tend to be, I'm stoic, I'm okay, that kind of thing, where women are all of a sudden like, I can't handle this anymore. I am going to empower myself and figure this out on my own, so it's definitely societal, personality differences. But as far as kids go, the children that I've been talking to lately, it's so sad. It always just like stab me, because these are boys that, well, typically boys have more energy anyway. They shouldn't be just having to sit in a chair all day long, that type of thing. So they're getting more of an ADHD label, because they can't sit still. But when I'm actually talking to them, it's more they can't focus. Like, their mind really cannot focus. They just can't focus. They have brain fog. They can't remember. It's brain fog at such a young age is crazy. And then they don't have the motivation. And then they talk about how they're getting high anxiety because they know that they have to go to school and they're going to feel this way and they can't keep up, and they're labeled as this ADHD, and it's this vicious process. So that's what I'm seeing with the boys right now. And you're right, the girls, it's, they're going to start their periods. They're starting periods years early. So it's just part of that, part of that hormonal cycle that now they're coming into their
which is not it shouldn't make you into a crazy person. Like, that is such, I feel like that stereotype has just been exaggerated for like comedic effect, for like storytelling, so much that we just believe it and we buy into it. And yes, every human has hormonal fluctuations that change when you grow, when you develop, when you age. That's normal. And whenever you deal with change, you can have change, which is hard. But it shouldn't be like a constant, continuous, extreme thing that makes you like a completely different person. That shouldn't be happening at any stage in life.
Right. And then these high school, college age kids, that it's so, the brain fog with these kids is so bad. They literally, they can't keep up in their schooling. They become completely overwhelmed. It causes anxiety, it causes depression. They get on these medications which cause anxiety, cause this depression. And then the women, the same thing. I mean, it's just across the board. It doesn't really matter the age, but this is what we're seeing. And even what I wrote down was brain fog is huge. And when we talk about brain fog, it's kind of a general term, an umbrella term, but people experience even that different ways. Like, some people literally can't remember their thoughts. They can't get their thoughts out of their head through their mouth. They can't remember things that they were supposed to do or things that happened in the past, or
Right.
other people can't remember how to get to a destination that they're going. It's
Right.
different for everybody.
And some people, it's just like cottony, just like slow, like they know that things should be happening
Right,
faster, but they just can't make that happen. And
right,
some people, it's just because they can't clearly make a thought, all the thoughts come out at once.
right.
Yeah.
Or there's this big long pause, and that's something too that we see a lot, but maybe people don't classify it as a symptom because it
Right.
seems like them. But we see, both ends of the spectrum where some people talk really slow, or there's a huge pause while they gather their thoughts, and then they're able to express them. So there's this pause. And then you get the other end of the spectrum where you have people they can't stop. Like
Right.
they're
Like
talking really fast and they're getting all their thoughts out, like Jenny said, and they can't stop this cycle where you have to
if they
literally
can't
shut them
hold
off.
the thoughts in their heads, they feel like they have to speak them while they're there, or
Right.
else they will disappear.
Right. Or they're cutting people off because they get that thought in their head and then they're immediately like, I've got to say that thought because I'm going to forget that thought. There's that. And that's definitely a symptom. And then you've got things that are now labeled like ADHD or OCD or autism or Asperger's, or, all of these type of labels that kids especially, but adults also are getting. Just mental clarity in general across the board. Motivation, there's so many
That's a big
people that
one.
say they just have no motivation. They have no
Right.
concentration, they have no motivation to do what they know they need to do.
Right. And the motivation is almost like outside of themselves. Like they know that they want to do something, like they have a goal, they want to finish college, they want to get a good grade. This is this early adult age or high school, but then they just can't, like they can't make themselves want to do the thing that they want to do. So it's
Right.
really difficult.
And that's so hard for an external person looking at, especially for these younger people, because you've got a parent looking at a child that seems lazy, or
Right.
that type of thing. Their grades are slipping in school, all of that. So it becomes the kid's in trouble all the time, or parents
Right.
frustrated.
And
But it's literally a imbalance in the body issue,
right.
not
If
a
they were simply lazy, then they would be enjoying doing nothing. That would be what they want to do. They would want to be sitting around, not doing homework. That's what laziness is. Like, oh, I don't want to, do my responsibilities because I have a better time watching TV or not doing anything. But these people who are having these mental health or imbalance issues, they're frustrated by it too. They're not happy. They're kind of blah, or they're upset and they're always in trouble, which is not not a happy thing. So if you look at it that way, you can tell the difference from like an external point of view. And I think that's important, especially when you're an adult in charge of the health and care of a young person. If you just
right.
call them lazy, then they believe that. Or if you just give them a pill and say you have ADHD, there's no like empowerment there for them to get healthy. They just are stuck now. This is just you. You're bad. You're not good at this, and this is just going to be your whole life.
Right. Right. And it probably will be their whole life, which
Yeah.
is very unfortunate. I thought it was interesting that the young boys that I've talked to lately, every single one of them mentioned, because I was asking, well, what makes you actually feel better? Like, what makes you feel like you can concentrate or you can, think? And
Mhm.
all of them said either being outside, being in nature, and then they would get excited and tell me about it, or doing something creative. So,
Right.
things like Legos or drawing or something like that, where probably their mind can relax a little bit and just
Right.
be, rather than having to be on this task and having to be stressed about they can't be on the task and, that type of thing. So I thought
Right.
that was interesting. But also just mood, people just, their mood, and we're not just talking about kids, we're just happen to be going back there, but people are always talking about that their mood is just not where it should be. And part of that is this internal dysfunction in the body that causes that. But
Right.
also then it's discouraging and it's frustrating and it's scary, so which came first, chicken or the egg? Adds, they add to each other and it gets worse. Irritability is a big one. People feel just irritable,
Right.
anxiety. I mentioned depression, low tolerance. So we hear that a lot from women, that they feel guilty then because they have a low tolerance for, say, their husband or their children. And that, I guess, like plays in with irritability, and they don't want to feel that way. They don't feel like they should be feeling that way, or that they would normally feel that way. They do, and they just can't get around it.
Right.
Yeah. And then also overwhelm, I wrote down, because that's a big one for, I would say, everyone across the board with ages, is just feeling completely overwhelmed. And part of that overwhelm is just that you can't function where you want to be, and something is wrong. You're not getting any answers. It's so frustrating. You can't figure it out on your own. You just can't figure it out. You're overwhelmed, but you're also overwhelmed because of what's going on internally.
Right. Yeah, it's a terrible cycle. And when you have no solution that you can even imagine, then how is that overwhelm ever going to get better? Like it can't, because you're just stuck. You're stuck in the cycle and it's just always going to grow and get worse. So that is why you need someone to support you when you are
Right.
at this point, to
Right.
kind of, remind you that there are solutions, to hold your hand when you can't get out of that overwhelm. That's a big part of what we do, and that's why we think that that support is really important. And having a plan, because then your brain has something else to focus on outside of just what's wrong. There's something to get better to focus on.
Well, and that helps with the overwhelm, because there's a plan with proven outcomes. So you can say, okay, I can take this off my own shoulders. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to figure it out. There is an answer. I just have to do it. So that helps a lot with just the overwhelm and the stress. And then, what causes these issues, it's always many, many things coming in.
Right.
We talk about that all the time. But what happens is, whatever is coming in with your life, then you get this dysfunction in your body, which causes these symptoms that we've been talking about. So there's the gut health is huge. And that tends to be more of a term that people are becoming a little familiar with lately, gut-brain connection. So that's a very real thing. The vagus nerve is one of the largest nerves in our body, and it goes from your brain to your gut, and it's full of neurons. There's more neurons in the nerve than even your brain.
And it branches off and touches like every organ in
every
your
organ, right?
body. So
Exactly.
it's talking to everything, and it's kind of bringing those systems together, but it's also sending out signals to all those systems. And when it's in a state of dysfunction and you're in fight or flight all the time, it is sending out like danger, danger, danger signals. And just like the trees and the snowflake or the thumbprint, it's going to send those signals stronger to some organs over others, just depending on who you are. So that's why some people end up with, major digestive issues. Some people have major sleep issues. Some people have these, mental issues that are what's showing up for them, but it connects all of those things.
Right. And that bacteria in your gut, remember, we have more bacteria in our body, in our microbiome, than cells in our body. And there's like 50,000 or trillion cells in our body, and there's more bacteria in our body than cells. It's hard to even wrap your mind around. Yes. But all of these cells are living organisms, and we work symbiotically with them. That's how we are alive. But when you get this gut dysfunction, then you've got these imbalances and these bacterial overgrowths, what we call infections, that are not beneficial to our bodies. And because they're living creatures, they're actually talking. They're sending signals, like Jenny said, they're sending out signals, they're talking, they're expressing through that vagus nerve to your brain. And so then you may feel like it's you, but really it's these signals that are being sent out. And that's why a lot of people have bladder issues. Because if you think about, the vagus nerve connects to all organs, and it's all things that our body does without us thinking about it. So think about how all of your organs run all day long. I mean, you don't have to consciously think about, okay, my heart has to pump.
Right.
Okay, every second, let's go, you know.
Gotta breathe air. Yeah. I just drank.
know.
Now I'm gonna need to use my bladder. Like, no.
Right. No, there are all these ways that your body works constantly, like your breath. Do you have to think about breathing constantly? You know, okay, breathe in 6. Let's go. Exhale.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's
I mean,
not
it's good to be mindful of your breath, but it would be awful if you had to think about it.
like all day long. Can you imagine? So you have all of these, you know, the body is so just beyond amazing. So all of these things happen without us even having to think about it. But when there is dysfunction within that gut brain connection, and if you also think about, you know, that keeps you in fight or flight, that's, I think that's becoming a more common term people hear about. And there are a lot of practitioners talking about fight or flight in the fact that, okay, all you have to do is frequency healing and, you know, your breath work and prayer and meditation.
Right.
Those are all good tools.
Yes.
But you also have to fix that internal environment of your gut health that we're talking about. Because when you're in fight or flight mode, if you always, I like the analogy of you're in emergency mode. So you're running from the tiger to save your life, right?
Right.
And maybe you've heard us talk about it, but it is what this is. I mean, literally. So you're constantly, you're running to save your life. So you are not going to stop and go to the bathroom.
Right.
If the tiger's chasing you, you know, so then constipation happens. You're not going to stop and go to the bath, you're not going to urinate. Right. And people end up getting UTIs, you know, not everyone. And again, it's different for everybody. You're going to feel that anxiety that you would feel if a car ran out.
I mean, your brain is got this mode so that you can stay alive. So when you're in that mode, you are actually on alert. You're more sensitive to sounds, to lights, things that maybe wouldn't seem, you know, like someone's attacking you, but they aren't. So, you know, you're more sensitive to those things. And that's a lot of that irritability, or that people will call it like a hot temper. And you know that you shouldn't be, but your body is giving you these reactions.
Right. Or that anxiety. Because think about if you're driving down the road and a car runs out in front of you, you immediately, your heart would stop, you know, start racing, and you'd be like, you know, that anxiety would be up like that. But that's where you're running all the time.
Right.
And also, if you think about, you're running to save your life all the time, constantly in that, you're not going to sleep. You're not going to rest. You're not going to heal. You know, there are all of these functions that happen when we're not in that state that are not going to happen if you're in this emergency response. And that's where a lot of people are writing.
Right.
And a good, just a physical thing to look for with that. I mean, you can tell if you were having these symptoms, clearly.
Like once you're aware that that's where they're coming from.
Right. But a physical way to look for it, you know, if you have a child or you feel this way and your spouse cannot wrap their mind around that you're feeling this way, that type of thing. If you or whoever is having the problem, just relax, stand up, relax, put your hands to your side and close your eyes. And if it's you, you know, look at the other person or have someone look at you, just relax and close your eyes. And if they see your eyelids fluttering, it's called blepharospasm, and that's a physical symptom that you are writing in this emergency response mode all the time. And, you know, it's just a good measure, especially for people that may not, like I said, believe that you are feeling this way. And it's also a good measure of when you're healing, as you see that go away, that shows you that you're out of that fight or flight mode. So that's just a kind of a side note, but not just the gut connection, but then there's also, you know, hormone imbalances come into play. So like Jenny said, you know, it's your body is a whole system. So everything is connected. There is no this endocrine system or this GI system or, you know, this brain system. It's all connected. It all affects each other. We work, it's one, you know, if you think of like a motor in a car or just a car, I don't know why we always come back to cars, but
I know we're not like big car people.
I know. But it all has to work together, you know. So if you think about the car is like your body and you've got the pieces and parts in there. And if you're missing one of them or one is not working quite as well, it's going to affect that whole car, the way it's running. And so it's the same with your body. But just the, you know, the hormonal imbalances that come into play. So then you get things like you have low motivation. You literally just can't be motivated. Like even if you wanted to get healthy and maybe you sign up for a program with somebody, you know, it's the right path for you, but there's no help or support. You just can't even do it because you have zero motivation, you know, that type of thing. That is from a hormonal imbalance. So your dopamine, we see that all the time on test results, but dopamine is very low, which means you just have no motivation. It's not your fault. There's just a break in that Krebs cycle in the body. Also serotonin, if you're not sleeping, your serotonin is off, and then you don't have that feel good, you know, hormone that we have. And so that may be causing,
or you're constantly chasing it. So that you're like looking for these external ways to create serotonin. So you're very like jump from one thing to the next, and then you're like in this cycle of exhausted and wired and exhausted and wired because you're trying to externally regulate or bring that in.
Right. A lot of people do that with exercise.
Yeah.
They do hardcore exercise because it makes you feel good in the moment. And then when you're not in the moment, then you come back down. Right. So then a lot of people will just stay in that, you know, do hardcore, you know, body building kind of things or long distance running or long distance bike riding because it makes you feel good in that moment, releases those hormones. You know, cortisol is a big one. I think people know what that is, and that's because of stress, and then that throws things out of balance. Stress also plays into this, external stressors in your life. But again, it's one of those things that, you know, if you have a really stressful life, if you're traveling all the time, if you have a very high stress job, then you're trying to keep up with your family and do all the right things and whatever stressors you're putting on yourself, that adds to this internal dysfunction. But that internal dysfunction is causing you stress too. So it's, again, it's always very cyclical and always very, which came first, the chicken or the egg, and they all affect each other, and it just gets worse and worse. And then what happens? And always the big, you know, if you want to pinpoint something, it's inflammation. So once inflammation, all of these things cause inflammation, and then inflammation can go systemic throughout the body. A lot of that is, you know, your brain becomes inflamed even, which causes all of these problems as well and keeps that whole cycle going. So there's so much that comes into play. So again, and we talk about this all the time, but if you see somebody talking about gut health, yes, you have to heal the gut. Very true. Yes, the gut health is causing this. Yes. But they're saying now take these pills or take these supplements or take these
or do this practice every day, this breathing, this meditation.
Right. But you can see how those are still treating symptoms and not addressing all of these issues that we just talked about. You really, again, you have to look at not only the body as a whole, holistic, but what is causing the symptoms as a whole, because they're
lifestyle, environment, mindsets, all these things.
Right. That then cause everything we're talking about. Right. And it goes deeper, then cause all the symptoms. So, excuse me, that's really what it is. That's what causing. And, you know, we see this all the time, and we see the results of this all the time.
Yeah.
No matter the age. And it's pretty amazing, actually. Like I've been thinking this morning about all the different people we've worked with and how their mental state has completely turned around. You know, as far as kids, like boys, all of a sudden they can sit still in school. They can think. They're not being angry at their siblings and, lashing out.
Right.
They're not, we have people that, a lot of adults have OCD, and they have all these weird OCD tendencies. They go away. Or even something like, I always find this fascinating, but we've seen it a lot, nail biting. That actually is something that happens when you're in that fight or flight stage. And so you will notice when people heal, even nail biting goes away.
Right, because if you think about
symptom,
the stereotype of that, like if you were watching a movie and you saw someone in the background, like, that means nervous, anxious.
right?
So
Exactly.
that comes across that way. So people who are doing that all the time, it's kind of that low level, anxiety, nervousness kind of coming out, and people don't
Right.
think about it that way.
Right. It's interesting. And I have never, not once, had somebody come to me and say, I have a symptom of nail biting. Nobody. But it's one of those things.
Buy bitter stuff and put it on their finger.
Right. They don't think of it as a symptom, but just watching people physically.
Yeah.
On our end, you can see the people that do that. And then you see over the course of months with healing, they quit doing that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. And then like the depression, we've had people that, like we had this one young woman one time, I don't remember how old she was, but pretty young, like maybe 30. And she was afraid. I don't know if you remember, you probably remember what I'm talking about. She was afraid. She couldn't go even in the car without her husband. And so, and she couldn't work. Like she was so highly anxious all the time. And so she had to just ride around with him. He was an electrician or something, I don't remember. And she'd have to go to job sites with him. Like she had to be with him all the time because of this high anxiety she was experiencing. But as she healed, she was able to then be her own person. I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine the feeling.
No. And we get that, like the people whose issues lean that direction, you think about, like, if they're on their own, like they're never gonna come to someone and get better. Like someone has to really help them get started. So it's always someone like a spouse or a parent or a, sibling, something like that brings those people in. But that transformation is crazy to see, like those people who, like that with the anxiety, or the people who are just so stuck, like just like nothing, like they can't emote at all, and they're just and then seeing them as they get better, like their personality comes back out, and then they're more engaged and upbeat and having feelings across the spectrum. It's really interesting to see that happen too.
Right. And that's another thing we didn't mention, but a lot of people say when they're feeling this way, like when they're in the state of dysfunction, they'll feel disconnected almost from themselves, like feelings, like Jenny said, like they don't feel, and I am probably not describing it correctly, but they feel like they love their family, but they almost feel like a disconnect where they're not feeling that, or a disconnect.
Like ennui, I think, is the closest thing that I can say that would describe that.
Yeah. And then as they heal, then they feel this, they have these feelings that we should have again. And some people, I mean, it's really interesting to listen to. And then brain fog is a big one.
Yes.
People.
So if you are the friend or family or spouse of someone and you kind of see that happening, it's important not to just be like angry, again, kind of like that laziness thing. Like you have to support them and help them through that stage to where they can get to a point where they can, take this commitment and responsibility on for themselves because they want to, because they're just at a place where they need someone else really to get them started.
Right. Yeah. And we had somebody one time that she was sleeping like 23 hours out of the day. Her husband was the one working. He was the one taking care of the kids. He was the one making the meals. He was totally overwhelmed because he had to do everything for her. And all she was doing was sleeping. She couldn't even talk. Like she couldn't even verbalize So there's no way she could have done that all on her own to
Right.
get her health back. But luckily he was a good support and was able to help her just get over that little hump in the beginning when she worked with
Mhm.
us. And then all of a sudden she could do these things for herself. And
Right.
so happy, because before that she couldn't even think about it. And then
Right.
we have people that their brain fog is so bad they're struggling with their job. You know, they're trying to keep up and pretend they can do their job okay, but yet they're having to have a million notes or whatever just to remind themselves, you know, because they can't remember the motivation, the concentration, all of those type of things. But our main issue is we want to tell you that, first of all, there is hope. You can totally
Right.
turn this around 100% of the time. And all of these mental issues, I don't even like that word, but I couldn't
It
think
is
of the
crazy.
word.
Like you said in the beginning, it makes it like other, like we call it mental health, like it's a
Right,
separate kind of health. Like
right,
it doesn't have to do with overall health when really it is all connected.
right. But we're
Yeah.
talking about things with emotions and the brain chemistry
Right.
and that type of thing. So I guess that's where we go with that word. But the point is, these turn around quickly. Like I would say, brain fog and clarity, they turn around one of the fastest things you can turn around once you start healing. And another thing that we hear a lot that, again, nobody ever comes to you with a symptom that says, I feel like I don't have a connection with my higher self. I don't have a connection. I feel like a
Yeah.
disconnect with God. You
Right
know,
here, this connection is broken. I need to fix that. No.
right. Nobody says that as a symptom, but as people heal, time and time again, we hear people say that now they feel like they have this connection that they didn't
Right.
have, and however people describe it. So that's an interesting piece too that you may not even think about. Um, but anyway, the point is you can turn this around. We do it all the time. We see it all the time.
Right.
And hopefully this gave you more of an idea of what is causing this. And like Jenny said, if you're the person that's watching your family member or your friend go through this, or if this is you, you know you can turn this around. But it is overwhelming on your own, of course. And this is what we do, obviously. But and I'm sure there are other people out there, but you have to address all of this. That's the point, in order to eliminate all of these
Yes.
mental symptoms people are.
Mental health is health. You have to be healthy to have healthy mental health. It's not a separate thing. It's not something that you are, completely out of, like it's out of your hands. It's just part of your chemistry or your, genetically predisposed. Like these are all the things that we get told for all health issues. And for some reason, this area has not quite caught up yet. Like
Right.
even the people who are in this space who are really grasping this foundational health, focusing on wellness, understanding your lifestyle, the causes, the cure. This piece is still a little bit difficult for people to tie in. And they're
Mm,
still doing a lot of like, oh, I still need to go see someone or take, you
right.
know, that's like one of the things that when people work with us, their ultimate goal is generally not to like not be on medication. So a lot of
Right.
people are on a lot of medication
Right. And
and
a
they
lot of
want
medications around mental health.
and they want to come off of them. And these are the ones that people sometimes um it's a little bit harder for them to imagine even. They're like, oh, well, I can get off all of my cholesterol medicine, but I really need, this Zoloft so that I can sleep and function. Like
Right.
they get almost anxiety around the anxiety.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing too, I've talked to a couple people this week that, and we see this all the time, but it was just kind of in my mind because of people I've talked to, but they can't, they're having a hard time dealing with issues going on. So if you think about, so say you're going through a divorce, clearly that is a stressful time no matter what. Even if you're happy about the divorce, it is a stressful time. And if you are unwell, you know, the way you are dealing with that is going to be a lot more difficult for you than if you are healthy. Or, you know, if you are somebody that has, you know, post or past stress trauma, you know, that you're dealing with and talking to somebody about, in order to deal with that and really be able to release that and work your way through that, you need to be healthy and mentally healthy in order to be able to do that, if that makes sense. So,
Yes, 'cause
you know,
those emotional stressors create the same reaction in your body as physical stressors. So like the you know, the idea that your body remembers trauma, or that, you know, you can physically be ill from traumatic experiences, is definitely true. You know, your body is reacting to that emotional stressor the same way it would react to a physical stressor. It just might not happen like in the moment, you know.
right, exactly. So again, it's all cyclical, it all adds to each other, but you really have to do that. That's why we call it foundational piece, so that you get your body as healthy as possible, in balance, out of that fight or flight mode, your GI issues are cleared up, you know, your hormones are in balance, so that you can deal is not a good word either. Get out of that, you don't deal with life anymore. You can
Right.
live your life, and we all have fluctuations and emotions
Right.
and things that with life, but then you can live your life the way you should be able to, instead of feeling like you have to deal with it. I guess that's a good way to put it. But anyway, so hopefully this was helpful for you. So at least you can, you know, feel like you can make a good decision to take that next step in order to do what you need to do. And as always, the very fastest route is a path, and we have that. So, you know, if this resonates and you want to get better as quickly as possible with proven results, definitely reach out to us. Or yes, but know for sure that you do not have to feel this way.
No. And then if this seems like someone you might know, feel free to share this with friends and family. If you're watching this in our private Facebook group, remember you can always jump over to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your audio podcasts, and you can share those out everywhere. So, and if you want to be able to interact and comment with us while we do these lives, join our Facebook group. And we appreciate, you know, the likes, the shares, and the subscriptions. So hopefully we can get all of this value and information out to more people.
Right, because this is definitely, you know, we talk about chronic health being an epidemic. This mental health is definitely an epidemic right now. And so many people suffer in silence, or it goes unnoticed as for what it is. So definitely share, you know, anytime that you can with somebody else, because you wouldn't believe how many people need this information. So yes.
Right.
So have a good day.
On that note, have a good day. See you next time. All right, bye.